Brought to you by Puffin.
Operation Tango by Anton Du Beke. Read by Gardner. Thank you to my wonderful twins, George and Henrietta, for inspiring my fictional ones. Chapter 1. A Secret Mission. The moment the school bell rang, Harry Morton ripped off his jersey and bolted for the classroom door. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. Not just the end of term, but the end of the school year itself. 6 weeks of summer stretched ahead of him, 6 glorious weeks of buttery sunshine, clear open skies, and exploring the beautiful hidden beaches of Cotterill Cove. "There isn't anything we can't do," Harry said to his twin sister Rosie, who, having stayed behind to wish their friends goodbye, caught up with him on the cobbled row outside the churchyard. It was almost a year since they'd been evacuated to live with their uncle in sleepy Cotterill Cove, and they'd spent almost all of that time chained to a school desk, reading, writing, and learning about the rule of law. This was their reward. "Anything, absolutely anything we want. I'll bet Uncle Rupert would let us go camping," Harry blathered. "I bet he won't mind if we live wild on the cove all summer long, just eating crabs and bathing in the pools at the base of the cliffs and—" "There is one thing we have to do first," Rosie said. "You know, before we start living like cavemen down on the seafront." Harry and Rosie reached the edge of the fishing village and looked down on the majestic sweep of the cove, where blue waters glittered under equally blue skies, where seabirds wheeled in grand formation and the colourful sails of fishing boats could be seen out at sea. "Oh yeah? What's that?" "Mum's birthday, Harry." "Yes," said Harry, grinning. "There is that." Rosie couldn't blame Harry. The promise of 6 free weeks filled her with wonder too, and sometimes it was strange to remember that Cotterill Cove wasn't really their home, that London still existed, all those hundreds of miles away. It had been nearly a year since Harry and Rosie had been sent to Cotterill Cove to escape the bombardment over the city, and in all that time they'd only seen Mum and Dad once. That wonderful dance at Christmas, when Mum had sashayed in her fineries, and there was Dad, freshly returned from the war. There'd been some talk of Mum and Dad coming to visit them for an Easter holiday, but in the end Dad had been called back to barracks for training. He was awaiting his orders to return to the war, and the chance kept slipping by. It was funny how quickly 1 week could turn into a month, the seasons hurtling by. Back at the start of the war, neither Rosie nor Harry had believed they might stay in Cotterill Cove this long. Now, though they still hankered for London, and the little Mayfair tea-room, that little dance hall that was Mum and Dad's pride and joy, Cotterill Cove almost felt like home. Even so, on special occasions, the distance between them felt strange. Rosie still wrote letters to Mum and Dad every week. Harry preferred to scribble a little message at the bottom of Rosie's, because writing a whole letter felt far too much like schoolwork. But it wasn't the same as seeing them every day. With Mum's birthday barely a week away, Rosie was determined to do something special for her. That was why, the very moment they returned to Nautilus House, that brooding manor house up on the headland, where Uncle Rupert and his faithful hound Lurch had been living alone until Harry and Rosie arrived, they settled in the East Wing sitting room, surrounded themselves with paints and pencils and ink pens, and set about making cards. If they made Monday morning's post, the cards ought to arrive right on time. Rosie only wished there was some way they might go and visit Mum, and especially Dad, before he was sent back to the war. The bombs had dropped fiercely on London last year, but Rosie kept an eye on the newspapers and knew that the battle in the skies over London wasn't nearly as ferocious as it had been. She'd asked Mum and Dad more than once if she and Harry might make the journey, but Dad said it was still too dangerous, and they would just have to wait for things to calm down. The problem with waiting, though, was that you never really knew how long. As Harry and Rosie were—
Sample complete. Ready to continue?